the scar of survival. The night was quiet, yet his mind was not. The human soldier sat alone in the corner of the alien palace courtyard, where silver towers rose like knives against the stars. His face carried a long scar that cut from his temple to his jaw, a mark from the Great War, a mark he could never hide. Every time he touched it, memories of fire, screams, and steel filled his heart. He had fought when the world of humans was burning. He had stood when his brothers fell. The scar was proof that he had survived, but it was also proof of pain. In the silence of the palace, he felt like a stranger, the only human in a place. Filled with towering alien guards and glowing banners, suddenly a voice broke the still air. "You are summoned," said an alien guard, tall and armored in black, his eyes shining like molten gold. The soldier stood slowly, his hand brushing, the scar without thought, and followed the guard through the endless halls. Every wall was covered with symbols of victories, but none belonged to humans. Humans were seen as weak, reckless, only useful as tools of war. Yet tonight, the human was called before the alien queen herself. His steps echoed as if the whole empire was listening. The great throne hall opened before him, vast and filled with light. Aliens of many species lined the path, whispering, staring at him like he was prey in a cage. The queen sat on a high throne, her crown glowing like the sun, her eyes cold but alive with power. She rose slowly, her every movement sending fear through the hall. The soldier lowered his gaze, unsure why he was called. He expected judgment, maybe mockery, maybe execution. But then, the queen began to walk. Down the long stairs, each step was like thunder. The crowd fell silent. He did not look up, but he felt her presence. The queen stopped before him, tall and radiant, her long hand reaching out, and then, to his shock, her fingers touched the scar on his face. The hall gasped. No one had ever seen their queen touch a human. Her touch was gentle, soft, almost human. Her eyes locked with his, not with anger, but with something else, something deeper. Time seemed to stop. The soldiers around held their breath. The council members froze. Even the guards did not dare to move. And then, in a whisper so soft only he could hear, she said, "You survived." The words pierced him more than any blade. They were not a command, not a judgment, but a recognition. In that moment, his scar was no longer just a wound. It was a story, a truth that even the queen could not ignore. The soldier's chest tightened. He wanted to speak, but no words came. His mind was filled with memories of fire, the battle where he was left to die. The queen's whisper was like a key, opening a door he had locked long ago. The hall was restless now. Aliens whispered louder, some in anger, some in fear. Why would the queen touch a human? Why would she honor him? The scar that made him an outcast was suddenly made sacred by her touch. The queen pulled back her hand, but her gaze did not leave him. He could feel the weight of her eyes, as if she saw not only the scar, but his very soul. And for the first time, he felt something strange in this palace of cold stone. He felt seen. He stood frozen, unable to understand. Was this mercy? Was this mockery? Or was it destiny? The queen turned back to her throne, her voice rising. "This human has endured what many of our own could not." The hall erupted in shock. Council members stood, shouting, some furious, some confused. The soldier's scar, once ignored, had now shaken the heart of the empire. And as the queen returned to her throne, the soldier's mind was heavy. Her whisper still echoed in his ear. "You survived? But why had she said it? Why had she touched him? What did she see in him that no one else ever did?" The scar burned on his face as if alive. The human did not know it yet. But this single whisper, this single touch, would change his life forever. The palace lights dimmed. The hall closed around him. Yet his heart raced, because deep inside, he knew something was beginning. Something greater than his scar. Greater than the war, greater than himself. And in the silence of the alien palace, he whispered back to himself, "I survived." But what comes next? The whisper. That changed everything. The hall still echoed with the Queen's words. The aliens stared in disbelief, some with fear, some with anger. The human soldier stood silent, his scar burning under the weight of 1,000 eyes. The Queen's whisper was still in his mind, repeating like thunder hidden behind clouds. "You survived." He felt no pride, only confusion. Why would the most powerful being in the Empire speak those words to him? The scar was always his shame, a wound from a war where too many died. Yet now, in front of the galaxy's rulers, the Queen had made it a symbol. A counselor rose from his seat, his voice sharp and angry. "Your Majesty, this is dangerous. Honoring a human in front of the court will spread unrest." Others joined. Him. Voices growing louder. "Humans are weak," one shouted. "They are tools, not allies." Another hissed. But the Queen raised her hand, and silence fell like a blade. Her eyes never left the scarred soldier. "Weak," she said, her voice calm but cutting. "He survived when many of us did not. His scar is proof." Her words carried power, and even those who hated humans could not deny them. The soldier's mind drifted back to the battle. He remembered the fire raining from the skies, the alien war machines tearing through cities. He remembered the moment the explosion threw him into the dirt. His face torn, his world burning. He remembered the silence after, the silence of death. Yet somehow he rose again, bleeding, broken but alive. That night he had thought survival was luck. But now, hearing the Queen's words, he wondered if survival had meaning. Suddenly, a soft sound reached his ears. The Queen was speaking again, but this time not to the hall, only to him. "Meet me after this gathering alone," she whispered, her lips barely moving. His heart raced. His scar seemed to pulse with heat. He gave a small nod, though fear gripped him. The gathering ended with unrest. The council left in anger. Guards tightened their lines, but the Queen had spoken, and no one could openly challenge her. The human was escorted out. But his mind was not calm. The Queen had whispered twice now, once to his scar and once to his fate. Later that night, he walked through the hidden corridors of the palace. Torches burned blue, the air heavy with silence. 2 guards led him to a tall set of doors carved with ancient marks. They opened slowly, revealing the Queen's private chamber. The room was vast but quiet, filled with strange glowing plants and flowing water. The Queen stood near a window that opened to the stars, her back to him. She turned when he entered, her eyes softer than they had been in the hall. "You wonder why I called you here," she said, her voice low. He stayed silent, unsure if speaking would offend her. She walked closer, her long robes brushing the floor. Then she spoke words that froze his blood. "Long ago, our ancestors wrote of a scarred human, a human who would survive against death itself and change the fate of 2 races." He blinked, unable to believe. "Prophecy?" he whispered, his voice trembling. The Queen nodded slowly. "Your scar is not just survival. It is a mark written in history before you were born." The soldier's heart pounded. Prophecies, destiny, these were stories told to inspire children. But the Queen's eyes were deadly serious. She moved to a hidden wall and pressed her hand against the stone. The wall shifted, opening to reveal an ancient chamber. Inside, carvings covered the walls, scenes of humans fighting alongside aliens, and there, etched into the stone, was the figure of a scarred human standing before a queen. His knees weakened. It was as if the stone spoke his life before it happened. Suddenly, a loud crash shook the chamber. The door burst open, and armed assassins rushed in, their blades glinting. The Queen's guards were nowhere near. This was a trap. The soldier grabbed a broken spear from the wall, his body moving without thought. The assassins charged, their eyes full of hate. The Queen stepped back, Her gaze locked on him. "Prove the prophecy true," she whispered, her voice steady. Blood rushed in his ears, his scar burned hotter than fire, and for the first time he realized the Queen's whisper was not just recognition, it was a call to fight, a call to destiny. As the assassins closed in, the scarred human raised the spear, ready to show the galaxy why he had survived. Secrets in the Queen's chamber. The broken spear shook in his hand. The assassins moved fast, shadows of death in the Queen's private chamber. Their blades gleamed under the pale light of glowing plants. The scarred human took a step forward. His breath heavy, his scar burned like fire, as if it knew what was coming. The first assassin struck, a curved blade slicing through the air. The human blocked with the spear shaft, sparks flying. The impact shook his bones, but he pushed back. With raw strength, the assassin stumbled. Surprised by the human's reflexes, another rushed from the side, but the human twisted, his scar pulsing with each heartbeat, his body moving faster than thought. He drove the spear into the attacker's shoulder. The alien screamed. The Queen watched with sharp eyes, but she did not move. She wanted to see, to know if the prophecy was real. More came. 3 at once. The human fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. Each strike was fueled not by training, but by survival itself. This was not skill, it was instinct. The same instinct that had kept him alive in the Great War. One assassin raised his blade high, aiming for the Queen. The human leapt without hesitation. The blade cut his arm, blood dripping. But he did not stop. He crashed into the assassin, sending them both to the floor. His scar stung like a fresh wound, but his fury was stronger. Silence fell. The last assassin dropped his weapon and fled. The chamber was littered with broken blades and spilled blood. The human stood shaking, his chest heaving. He looked at the Queen, unsure if he had saved her or sealed his fate. The Queen stepped closer, her eyes fixed on him. "You fought as if death could not touch you," she said softly. He dropped the broken spear, his hands trembling. "I fought because I had to," he whispered. The Queen's gaze fell to his scar. "No, you fought because you were chosen." She moved to the hidden wall again, the carvings glowing faintly. "These prophecies speak of more than survival," she explained. "They speak of a scarred human who will stand between my throne and the council, a human who will protect the Queen. Not out of loyalty, but out of something stronger." The soldier shook his head. "I am no prophecy. I am only a man who refuses to die." The Queen tilted her head, her voice colder. "And that is why you are dangerous, because men who refuse to die cannot be controlled." She led him deeper into the chamber. There, a massive crystal pulsed with light. Inside it, images shifted. Wars, alliances, betrayals, and always, a scarred human stood at the center, sometimes as a savior, sometimes as a destroyer. The soldier stared, fear crawling down his spine. "So which one am I?" he asked, his voice low. The Queen's lips curved in a faint smile. "That depends on what you choose, savior or destroyer, bridge or blade." Before he could answer, another sound echoed. A secret passage opened, and a shadowy figure stepped out. It was no assassin this time. It was a council elder, one of the most powerful voices in the Empire. His eyes burned with fury. "Your Majesty, you risk everything for a human. You risk war, you risk betrayal. This scarred man will not unite us. He will tear us apart." The Queen's hand tightened on her staff. "And yet, you send assassins to kill him. Is it fear that drives you, Elder?" The Elder's voice was sharp as steel. "Fear of what he represents." His eyes turned to the soldier. "Your scar is not a symbol, it is a weapon, and weapons must be destroyed before they cut too deep." The chamber filled with tension. The Queen stood firm, the Elder's threat hanging in the air. The human realized he was no longer just a survivor. He was now the center of a storm that could rip the galaxy apart. And as the Elder raised his hand, calling hidden guards into the chamber, The scar burned hotter than ever. The human understood at last. This was not survival anymore. This was war, blood, and loyalty. The elder's words still hung in the chamber like poison. His hidden guards poured in from the secret passage, armored and armed with blades that glowed red. The queen's private chamber, once silent and sacred, now turned into a battlefield. The scarred human stepped forward, his body tense. His arm still bleeding from the earlier fight, but his eyes were sharp. He knew the assassins were nothing compared to this. These were trained killers of the council. The elder smirked, his voice dripping with venom. "Let us see if your scar can save you now." The queen raised her staff, its crystal burning with light, but she did not strike. Her gaze fell on the human instead. "You survived once," she said, her voice steady. "Now show them why." The first wave of guards attacked, their blades cutting the air. The human moved fast, dodging left, twisting right. His scar throbbed with each motion. As if guiding him, he grabbed a fallen weapon from the ground and slashed. 2 guards dropped, their armor cracking under his raw strength. The queen watched, her heart racing. This human did not fight like the others she had seen. He fought like a man with nothing but survival in his blood. Each strike, each move, was not polished. It was desperate, but desperation had its own power. The elder snarled, "Enough of this game, kill him, and silence her lies." The guards closed in tighter. The human stumbled, his body slowing. A blade sliced across his back, another stabbed near his ribs. Blood spilled, yet still he stood. His scar burned so hot it felt alive, like the wound itself refused to let him fall. The queen suddenly stepped forward. Her staff struck the ground, sending a wave of energy through the chamber. The guards staggered, their blades trembling. "He is under my protection," she declared, her voice echoing like thunder. "Strike him, and you strike your queen." The chamber froze. Some guards hesitated, their loyalty to the crown stronger. Then to the elder, others still raised their blades, torn between command and fear. The human, gasping for breath, leaned on his weapon. His eyes met the queen's. For the first time, he saw something new in her gaze. Not just prophecy, not just power, but trust. His chest tightened. He had never been trusted by anyone since the war. He had always been the outcast, the scarred survivor. Yet here, in the heart of the enemy's empire, the alien queen placed her fate in his hands. With a roar, he charged again, his body broken, but his spirit unbroken. He cut through the remaining guards, each strike. Fueled by more than survival now, it was loyalty, not to the council, not even to himself, but to the queen who saw more in him than just a scar. Blood stained the chamber floor. The last guard fell, silence returning like a heavy shadow. The elder's face twisted with fury. "This proves nothing. He is a danger to us all." But before he could speak further, the queen raised her staff again, her voice sharp. "No, elder, this proves everything. He bleeds for me, he fights for me, and from this moment, he is mine." The hall shook with the weight of her words. The prophecy was no longer a secret in shadows. It was now spoken by the queen herself. The scarred human was no longer just a survivor. He was the chosen shield of the queen. The elder stepped back, his eyes burning with hate. "Then you doom us all," he spat, retreating into the shadows. But the queen's voice followed him. "No, elder. It is you who doom us by fearing what you cannot control." The chamber finally fell silent. The human dropped to one knee, his blood soaking the stones. The queen knelt beside him, her fingers brushing his scar again. Her whisper returned, softer this time. "You survived again, and now you are no longer alone." The scar that shook the galaxy. The council hall roared like a storm. Elders shouted. Soldiers stood ready. Banners of alien houses swayed high. But all eyes fell on the human standing in the center, his armor torn, his body bleeding, his scar. Glowing under the great light of the chamber, the queen stood beside him, tall and unshaken, her staff in her hand, her crown burning with power. "Today," she declared, her voice cutting through the chaos, "the council sees the truth of what it fears most. A human who survives not only for himself but for all of us." The chamber erupted in protest. "Humans are weak," one elder shouted. "This scarred soldier is a threat to our rule," cried another. But none dared step forward, because the scarred human's presence itself was defiance. He did not speak, but the silence around him was louder than their cries. Every scar, every wound on his body was a word. Every breath he took was proof of defiance. The queen turned to him, her voice lowering so only he could hear. "This is the moment. Your scar is no longer yours alone." Suddenly, the elder who had plotted the assassins rose, his hand lifted high, calling forth hidden allies in the chamber. Hundreds of soldiers, in dark armor, marched in, weapons drawn. The council gasped. The hall trembled. This was no longer politics. This was war inside the throne itself. The queen raised her staff. Her guards closed ranks. But before she could command, the human stepped forward, blood dripping onto the sacred floor. His scar blazed like a firebrand, and for the first time he spoke aloud before the council. "You call me weak, but weakness does not survive fire. Weakness does not bleed and rise again. I stand here because I refuse to die. And if my scar offends you, then know this. It is not a mark of shame. It is a weapon, and it will burn through every lie you hold." His words shook the hall. Some soldiers lowered their blades. Others froze in doubt. The queen's eyes widened. He was no longer just a prophecy. He was a voice that could break the galaxy. The elder screamed in rage, "Kill him now!" But his soldiers hesitated, for the scar on the human's face seemed to glow brighter, and those who met his eyes felt fear. The fear of a man who could not be broken. The queen raised her staff and spoke with thunder. "Enough! This scarred human is under my crown's protection, and from this day, any who move against him move against me." Silence crushed the hall. Elders trembled, soldiers dropped to one knee. Even those who hated humans could not defy their queen. The elder's face turned pale, his power slipping, and in his rage he fled into the shadows. His fate uncertain, the queen turned to the scarred human. Her hand brushed his scar once more, but this time her whisper was not only for him, it was for the whole council to hear. He survived, and through his survival, so shall we. The council bowed their heads. The scar, once mocked, once hidden, had become a banner of unity. Stories of that moment spread across the stars. How the alien queen touched a human scar, and how her whisper shook the galaxy. Later, as the soldier walked out of the great hall, he touched the scar on his face, no longer with shame but with pride. For it was not just his story now. It was the story of a galaxy that would never be the same. And in the quiet echo of his steps, he heard the queen's words again, not as a whisper this time, but as a promise. "Your scar will change the galaxy forever."